So welcome to the third video lesson in French for Absolute Beginners, Module 1, where we're going to cover some countries and nationalities and also the formation of feminine form when it comes to adjectives for nationalities. Now let's take a first look at some of the... let's first look at how do we say country in French. Country is le pays. Now, let's look at some countries. Les pays. La France. Please repeat after the video. La France. L'Angleterre. L'Espagne. L'Allemagne. L'Italie. Les États-Unis. So, obviously, la France, it's France. L'Angleterre is England. L'Espagne, Spain, l'Allemagne, Germany, l'Italie, Italy, les États-Unis. You will see that in front of all the countries there is an article. Articles are covered in some of the next videos, but for the time being, just to acknowledge that there is an article before the and the last piece. Now let's take a look at how do you make a feminine form in French. There is a simple equation. You take the masculine form of the adjective, you add an E, and then you get a feminine form. So let's take a look at example. For the country France, la France, French is français, and French for feminine is française. So you add an extra E, but there is also a change in pronunciation. So let's take a closer look at the pronunciation. Let's first look at the pronunciation of the masculine form for French. So we say français. And here are a few rules. The one which you already know, that the final letter is never pronounced. So this is why the S is crossed out. The combination of letters A and I is pronounced as E, as A. And this C with the hook, or as it's called in French, c'est-dire, it's always pronounced as S. You don't have to think whether it's K or S. And the combination of letter A with N gives you nasal. So we have français. Please repeat after the video. Français. Now let's take a look. How do we make a feminine form? We take the français in masculine, we add an E, and then we get française. So we have the same beginning. But by adding this E, the final S, which wasn't read in masculine, is now read as Z. So française. Now let's take a look at England and English. L'Angleterre is the country, and English is said anglais, and in feminine form, anglaise. So very similar to what's happening with français, française. Let's take a look at the pronunciation. Again, you have a nasal sound here, and the combination of letters A-I. It's very useful to remember this. It's more or less anytime you have a combination A-I, it will be read as A. So, how do we make a feminine form? We add an E and we get anglaise. In case of Spain, there is a smaller change. So for the country Spain, l'Espagne, Spanish is pronounced espagnol, and feminine form is espagnol. So we do add an extra E, but there is no big change in pronunciation. There is maybe just a sound, L is more pronounced, and you have espagnol, masculine, espagnol, like you have an E at the end. And another rule you can remember, the combination of letters G-N is read as N, N. L'Allemagne, here we have the same formula. You add an E for feminine, and the German is pronounced allemand, feminine form allemande. Allemand, again, you have a nasal. You do not pronounce the last D in the masculine form, whereas in feminine, you say allemande. So this final D is now pronounced. L'Italie. In case of l'Italie, country is l'Italie. The masculine form is italien, whereas the feminine form is there is a slight difference in case of formation of feminine form. So we say italienne, and you do not add just an E, but the N is doubled here. And let's take a look at the pronunciation. So the masculine form has a nasal sound at the end, italien, whereas the feminine form no longer has a nasal, but you have N, italienne. Similar thing happens with les États-Unis, or the United States of America. Masculine form is américain, and feminine is américaine. So again, at the end of the masculine, you have a nasal. So this combination of letters is also pronounced as a nasal sound, américain, and the feminine is américaine, so no longer a nasal, and the N is pronounced at the end. And the last country is la Suisse, Switzerland. And in this case, it's easy because you have two same forms. Whenever a masculine form ends in E, there is no reason for us to add an extra E, so these two forms are the same, Suisse. So let's take a look at the country Switzerland, la Suisse. This is the easiest situation here because whenever the masculine form already has an E at the end, there is no reason for us to add an extra E here. And that's only if the E doesn't have an accent. So we have masculine and feminine form Suisse. And actually it's the same form as for the country, so beware, pay attention. The only, when it comes to pronunciation, the only thing you have to look out for is the combination of the letter U, the kissing E in French, and the fact that you do not pronounce, you have to be aware that you do not pronounce the final E. Now let's review. How do we make a feminine form? Well, we add an E. Sometimes there is no change in pronunciation, like espagnol, espagnole, or the slight change in pronunciation, or add an E, but there is a change in pronunciation, where you read the final consonant, where it's like allemand, allemande. Or when nasal changes in the non-nasal sound, like américain, américaine. When combination of the letters at the end of masculine form is IEN, then you add an NE, and again the nasal changes into a non-nasal sound. And finally, there is a situation where there is no change in forms. Now, these are some of the basic rules. There are many more rules to making feminine forms, but for the time being, we're going to rely on these. Now let's practice. Can you say the feminine form after you hear the masculine? Français. Did you say française? Anglais. Anglaise. Allemand. Allemande. Espagnol. Espagnole. Italien. Italienne. Américain, américaine, Suisse, Suisse. Now let's take a look at what it looks like in a sentence. So with masculine, we will always have to use, when we talk about man, we will always have to use or anything that is masculine gender, we will always have to agree. The adjective will always have to agree. And we will say, il est français. He is French. Elle est française. She is French. So you have to use the feminine form here.